You're listening to The Bible Guys, a podcast where a couple of friends talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Bible Guys.
We're back.
We are back, better than ever.
There we go.
We're always better than ever, Jeff.
Always.
Although, the older we get, can we really claim that? Because
I don't know.
It seems like when I wake up and you ever hear Brian Regan, the comedian, say, he's like, when you get old, he's like, oh, my hip snap, my hip hurts. He goes, I guess now forever.
Forever. Yeah, it always hurts now.
Right. I guess I'll just have to live with that pain.
I was walking in today and my knee was hurting.
Oh, no.
And I thought, I wonder if I did something to my knee.
Oh, you're going to be talking about prunes next.
Exactly.
That's what you told me the other day. Last week, you're like...
You start talking about aches and pains, you're only a year or two away from start talking about the benefit of prunes.
Because I said I was bird watching.
Yeah, bird watching.
My wife has a bunch of bird feeders. Uh-huh. She likes them.
That's what happens.
All right. Well, today we're going to jump into a segment called Guess the Word. It's like taboo.
Oh, these are fun.
And if you're watching instead of listening, we're going to be putting the words that I cannot say on the screen, on the bottom of the screen. But basically, that's the whole thing. I'm not allowed to say these words.
Okay.
I got to get you to say the word. Okay. Are you ready?
You're trying to get me to say a specific word without saying a bunch of words that she's banned.
Yeah, the keywords. Okay. Forbidden keywords.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Ready?
Yes.
If I were to make a shirt, I could either fasten it with snaps or...
buttons.
Another thing.
Zipper.
Yes, correct. I couldn't say pants, I couldn't say button or fly or jacket, or I couldn't say the word zip.
Oh, okay.
So I said shirt.
Shirt.
Not bad, right?
Very good.
Okay.
Excellent, Chris.
This is going to be very quick. You ready?
Yes.
You say God bless you to what?
Sneeze.
That's it. So she said I couldn't say cough, tissue, cold, handkerchief, or allergy.
Ooh, okay.
But the God bless you is a pretty... It's a pretty...
That's great.
Yes, it was
excellent.
Good angle, Chris, if I do say so myself. All right, ready? A referee wears this around his neck.
Whistle.
Yes. I was not allowed to say blow, tune, train, stop, or hum.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But hey, I went for football.
Good job. That's right.
Okay, now this one...
Super excited about football this year.
By far is the hardest.
Okay.
Okay. If I were to take my pencil and to write something randomly while daydreaming, that is called a...
sketch.
No. Randomly while daydreaming.
Randomly?
It's nonsense.
A doodle.
Yes, it's a doodle.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. That is a hard one.
I was not allowed to say Yankee, dandy, draw, poodle, or scribble.
Oh, yeah, Yankee Doodle.
So the key was nonsense.
Yes.
I had to say the word nonsense, and I didn't say that right away. I should have said that right away.
Yes.
Okay,
good
ready?
Job.
This is a fork that are sticks.
A what?
Oh, I blew it. Oh, I was looking at my keywords that I wasn't allowed to say. These are chopsticks, but I'm not allowed to say sticks.
You're not allowed to say sticks.
Because it's a version of the word.
And what did you say?
I wasn't allowed to say Chinese, rice, noodles, Japanese, or Asia, but I said a fork that are sticks.
A fork that are sticks. Yeah. You know,
I blew it.
Yeah.
I blew it. I'm usually pretty good at this.
Yes.
But I said the word sticks.
You can't do it. All right. Well, then...
sorry, Desiree, to let you down.
Let me see. You and I, what did we get? We got 4,000 points, 1,000 points apiece.
To my public.
But mistakes are 10,000 points. So
yeah,
our listeners just got 10,000 points today. Congratulations, listeners.
Yes. I'm sorry to my public.
We are so happy for you.
For all the people who believed in me, I'm so sorry.
Oh, well, I feel let down. I'm not even sure if I can go on with the rest of this episode.
Yeah. I can't go on to read 2 Samuel 2.
Yes. So, we're in 2 Samuel now, which is really cool. 1 Samuel covers the life of Samuel, covers the coronation of Saul. Saul gets derailed and starts pursuing his own interests.
Womp womp.
David winds up being elevated, anointed to be king. He kills Goliath. He winds up building a great army. He has to run away from Saul. And finally, after Saul disobeying God and dishonoring God so many times, God kills him.
Look at you. You just summarized the entire book of 1 Samuel.
There you go. So then he's been killed. David has been out with his army running around just destroying the Amalekites and goes back to his hideout in Ziklag, which is a Philistine city. And he has Achish, the king of the Philistines, thinking that he's an ally, and he's not.
Right.
He's just hiding from Saul in enemy territory. So while he's there, he finds out that Saul has been killed, and he kills the messenger, right? The guy who brings him the message. But then in 2 Samuel chapter 2, it says, after this, David asked the Lord, should I move back to one of the towns of Judah? Yes, the Lord replied. Then David asked, which town should I go to? To Hebron, the Lord answered. David's 2 wives were Ahinoam from Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal from Carmel. So David and his wives and his men and their families all moved to Judah, and they settled in the villages near Hebron. Then the men of Judah came to David and anointed him king over the people of Judah. When David heard that the men of Jabesh-Gilead had buried Saul, he sent them this message. May the Lord bless you for being so loyal to your master Saul and giving him a decent burial. May the Lord be loyal to you in return and reward you with his unfailing love. And I, too, will reward you for what you've done. Now that Saul is dead, I ask you to be my strong and loyal subjects like the people of Judah, who have anointed me as their new king. But Abner, son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had already gone to Mahanaim with Saul's son Ish-bosheth. There he proclaimed Ish-bosheth king over Gilead, Jezreel, Ephraim, Benjamin, and the land of the Asherites, and all the rest of Israel. Ish-bosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king, and he ruled from Mahanaim for 2 years. Meanwhile, the people of Judah remained loyal to David. David made Hebron his capital, and he ruled as king of Judah for 7.5 years. Is that where I end?
It is.
That is where I end.
Yes.
Okay, so he's become the king of Judah, and he invites the people from Jabesh-Gilead to follow him too. But there's another pretender to the throne, Ish-bosheth, one of Saul's sons who didn't get killed.
So give us an explanation as to what is the difference between Judah and Israel. Doesn't Israel encompass Judah?
Yeah, so there's 12 tribes in Israel, and this comes up in Jacob's 12 sons, or he had 13 sons, but the 12 tribes of Israel, when they come across the river with Joshua, then Joshua helps divide the land into these 12, essentially like we would think of states or counties. It's not a very big place, only 90 miles north and south, right. So more like counties. And the different tribes got land based on how big their tribe was. Right. And so Judah was the largest of the tribes and was pretty powerful. And they have the land around what is now Jerusalem, right? So Hebron there and Bethlehem, all that area is all in Judah. And so what happened was this one tribe, Judah, they said, hey, we're on your side. We think you're king. And then he reaches out to Jabesh-Gilead, which is in another region, and says, hey, Judah's following me. We want you guys to follow me too. And so he has 2 of the tribes following him. The other 10, or it doesn't even say all 10, but a bunch of them follow, 5 of them, 6 of them follow Ish-bosheth instead for a little while. To what, 2.5 years, 7.5 years. Yeah,
so it's interesting how in the Old Testament, how they would refer to Israel as all the people of Israel, but then sometimes it's Judah and Israel. And we'll see that they actually war with one another, right? Right. And so they're divided, and yet they're technically the same people. They're just divided because they have, different beliefs, in this case, about who's king.
Right. Yeah. Right. So Abner, if you're curious, Abner was Saul's main general. And it's interesting because David had served under Abner. Remember, David kills Goliath, and then Saul sets him up, and he's a commander of one of Saul's armies. Well, the top general of all of Saul's armies is Abner. Later on, when Saul is hunting down David, Abner's the one hunting David, right? He's the one that's in charge of trying to find David. And it's interesting because they have a lot of respect for each other. They see each other across enemy lines often. But, warriors recognize warriors, So there's some of those gangsters recognize gangsters, right? That's kind of the thing, that there's a certain amount of respect between these two guys, even though they wound up being on opposing sides. And so during this time, then Saul dies, and Abner jumps in and goes, hey, Ish-bosheth is the last living son of, the last healthy living son of Saul. And so I think he should be king. And so he takes the forces of Saul's army and he elevates Ish-bosheth. And so now here they are, they're squaring off against each other even then. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting moment here where there's a lot of tension. For 7.5 years, you think, oh, good, Saul's dead, David gets to be king. And even here, for 7.5 more years, he's not king of a unified nation.
That's crazy. There's a little thing here in the Life Application Study Bible, which is so helpful to have a study Bible, and it just gives a section about Abner itself and talks all about him. And it says his weaknesses, he had selfish motives in his efforts to reunite Judah and Israel rather than godly conviction, and he slept with one of the royal concubines after Saul's death. Well, there you go. And his lessons from life is that God requires more than conditional, heartfelt cooperation. And so, how about that? So Abner is recognized as a key player in this story, for sure.
Yeah, we'll see Abner more over the next several days. I think we'll see him pop up a few times. But I think it's interesting to say why. Why would God let, after all this time, David has waited maybe 13, 14, 15 years.
Right.
Why would God make him wait 7.5 more to have all of Israel follow him? Mm-hmm. Right? What do you think is the reasoning behind that?
I don't know. Probably consequence to Saul's disobedience, perhaps. Just taking a nation that was once recognizing God as the king, and then, part of Samuel's prediction, right? Didn't Samuel talk about how it would be divided and how there would be, basically almost nothing good coming from wanting a king?
Right.
And so God said that he was just tired of the nation, of begging them and pleading to God for a king. And so God just says, you know what? I'm going to give them what they want. But Samuel, before this happens, I want you to tell them everything bad that's going to come from wanting a king.
Right.
So even though that God promised David to be the next king, he technically did not promise David that he wasn't going to inherit a mess.
Right.
Right? David was just going to be the best king, the most righteous king. David was going to be a significant king in the line of the Messiah. But we can't necessarily figure out why. But honestly, my guess is it's a consequence of Saul.
I think you see God developing David. David had tremendous potential as a young man in those hidden valleys, as we've talked about, learning to use his sling, learning to play the harp, learning to write down these amazing prayers, learning to fight the bears and the lions, and to have courage and to be faithful and a man of integrity even when nobody else was watching and he was alone with his sheep. God's developing him. Then God goes, okay, I can trust this kid. I'm going to elevate him. And he makes him famous. And he goes out and kills a giant. And they're singing, Saul killed his thousands. David killed his 10,000s. They're giving him more credit than he deserves at that time. And then he has favor with Saul. He's playing in Saul's palace. And then Saul's hunting him. And then he has favor. And then he's being hunted again. And he's running. And during that time, he's gathering around himself these mighty men, the fiercest warriors that Israel had ever really known, right? Not just one or two, like all of them.
Right.
All of the toughest guys. And during that time, David is learning international diplomacy with the Philistines. He's figuring out how to stay safe and coexist with his mortal enemies. So he's learning international diplomacy for a few years on that. He's learning how to navigate his men. He's being challenged in his own integrity. Are you going to kill this guy or no? Are you going to kill Abigail's husband or no? He chooses integrity in that moment. He listens to the advice of Abigail. You're seeing all this character and these skill sets being developed over time. Hey, only time can build wisdom into you. Time in God's word, right? And so he says, now he has, he didn't touch Saul, right? He left Saul. And he just let God's time work out, which then demonstrated he has patience in God. He's going to follow God's way. He's not going to be like Saul, where he's just going to force his way all the time. And so then he's not going to take matters into his own hands. God sorts it out, and then he only gets part of the kingdom. And it's going to take, over the next several years, diplomacy and victory over maybe the greatest warrior that he's going to have to come against, Abner.
Yeah.
Right? And so he's learning internal diplomacy. He learned international diplomacy with the Philistines, cross-cultural. Now he's got to figure out diplomacy within his own people. How does he lead well? And so this skill set, he's still a pretty young man at this point, right? He's under
Right.
40.
Right.
And he's a young man who God is choosing. Hey, listen, you will be king. That is set in stone. It will happen. Not only that, you will reign for a very long time. That's set in stone. It's already a promise.
Mm-hmm.
But just because God made a promise doesn't mean God doesn't say, hey, I've got a lot of things to develop in you before I set you loose, because there's a lot of responsibility. The more responsibility you desire, the more development it's going to take to get you there.
Yeah, and it's a reminder to us that God never promises us a trouble-free life.
No.
So, we can look back to the Bible and we can still see all the great promises that God has for us. They're all still true. They're all where we find our hope. But we have to understand that just because we follow Christ doesn't guarantee us free from trouble. In fact, he actually says, in order to follow me, you're going to have to pay a price, because the world will hate you at times. The world will persecute you. The world will reject you at times. And so, you have to be committed to follow Christ and, to make your choice, to understand that it's the best way, it's the only way, to whom other God shall we turn to?
Right.
What God is as great as our God, that type of thing. And but at the same time, Jesus, he calls us to die, right? I mean, isn't that really what Christianity is?
Yeah.
It's dying to yourself.
Yeah.
He says, take up your cross and follow me. And then he says, if any man isn't willing to forsake their own mother and father and everything dear to them and follow me, he cannot be worthy of being my true disciple.
Yeah.
So, God never promises a trouble-free life, but he does promise to always be with us.
Yeah.
He promises to never leave us, never forsake us. He promises to give us strength and to give us power, to give us the, ability to depend on him every day. And honestly, the most powerful position that we could be in, just like David, I'm sure, right? He has to remind himself like that every day. The most powerful position to be in is to say, okay, God, I'm waking up today, and I got to tell you, I need you today, right?
Yeah.
I need you today.
Right.
Because that's why Deuteronomy even says, he says, hey, you're going to get in the promised land, and when things are going well, you're going to forget me. Right? So don't forget me when things are going well, because when things weren't going well, you woke up every day depending on manna, depending on the wilderness, right? Depending on my daily provision. And when things weren't going well, man, you had no choice but to depend on me.
Right.
And when you have blessings in your life, don't forget me. And so, yeah, I think all of that is sort of wrapped up into what we're seeing here, this question of, hey, what's the deal, God? Yeah. You promised me to be a king, and yet it doesn't feel like I'm fully a king,
right? And you're not yet.
You're not yet, but guess what? It's going to come.
Yeah, but he could just manage. I think God gave him what he could manage. He could manage Judah.
Yeah. And
he could manage maybe Jabesh Gilead. That's it. Now let's see how you lead that. Lead that for a while. Be faithful there. You mentioned a big part of the call of Christianity is to take up your cross. And there's an old gospel song that says he never promised that the cross would not get heavy. Mm-hmm. Or the hill would not be hard to climb.
Yeah.
He never offered victories without fighting, right? And there's something to that what we want is we want the easiest way to the greatest successes. That's our preference, Lord. If you're looking, what I would like, we'd like to open up the menu of the Bible.
That's our preference,
right? We'd love to open up. We want the Bible and God's Word to be like a big menu,
right?
And we want. Let me see, what's the easiest way to the greatest success? And that's what I want from you, God. And that's what we want to order. We want to like we're talking to a short order cook. Hey, just whip it up real quick.
Yeah,
Give me the big. Yeah. And instead, God says, no, I'm going to use the events in your life, and I'm going to develop you into, if you'll let me, into the greatest person that you can become for me. And what you see is David is, I don't know of a person in the Bible who demonstrates more long-term patience with a promise established when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
Right? There's other patient people in the Bible.
Yeah.
But he was promised to be king. Yeah. Dude, if you were promised to be king when you were 15 and you had to wait 5 years, you'd be losing it.
Right.
Right? I would be too. But he waits for so long, unbelievable patience. And he also, in that patience, develops all the skills to become the greatest king Israel had ever seen.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we even think back like I went to New York and I saw, this is, just bear with me on this one. This is a little bit of a stretch, okay? But when I went to New York, you see places where your forefathers were, right? Sure, yeah. And when you sometimes think of like, oh, Abraham Lincoln did such great things, right? Abraham Lincoln's life was rough, bro.
Yeah.
He was people attempted to assassinate him almost every other day.
It's crazy.
I mean, he absolutely had one of the worst existences ever, and he fought and fought and fought and did something great. And so when we went to the place where Hamilton was in there and Aaron Burr and George Washington and we sat down in the restaurant where they actually had all the debate. Hamilton says the room where it happened.
Right.
I was in the room where it happened, literally. And I was thinking about, man, this is where all greatness was. But guess what? Back then, I'm sure it didn't feel great.
It was hard. Yeah.
I'm sure it was hard, man. Mm-hmm. You read about just some of their hardships for great things. And, and again, it's just a reminder that, David, we look back now and say, what a great king. He's the most important king. He's in the line of Jesus. And everybody refers back to this anchor of of kingship in the Old Testament. Man, David went through it, man.
It was hard.
It was tough.
Hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So time is one of those things that we just hate to spend to develop the skills that we need. But there are some skills and experiences. There are things that you need to develop. And so I just want to encourage, especially if you have not yet achieved what it is that you're dreaming of or that you believe that God wants to do in your life. I had a conversation with some young adults recently, just struggling financially and all those things. I'm like, hey, I was there. You've been there, right? And there's just something with regard to, we get frustrated because we know Elon Musk made his billions when he was 30.
Right.
Right. So, oh man, I'm not a billionaire yet. And I'm already 35, so what do I do?
Right.
But the normal people, usually wealth begins to come if you manage well, late 40s, early 50s is when you start to come into, okay, I'm figuring out how to make some money. And then you get this 15-year run of really making some money. The top executives in America, for the most part, are in their 50s and early 60s. That's right. It takes a whole lifetime to get this window of 10 or 15 years of massive, your peak productivity, right? And so take the time, develop the skills, learn the things. You might feel frustrated in your faith right now that you just don't know enough about God's word. Take the time, lean into it, spend the time. God will give you eventually, if you're faithful, a person of integrity that's faithful and patient waiting on God, God will give you exactly what he promises he'll give you.
That's
right. And that's what happens in David's life. It's coming. We're going to read some rough roads ahead here for the next little while, but he gets there.
That's great.
It's super exciting.
Well, hey, that's our time. So we'll pick up tomorrow and hopefully we'll see you there on the Bible Guys.